It used to be said that to make the most of the sensors, you have to use good glass. But I think that to get the most of the sensor, you have to mount some bad glass on it. Hi, I'm Shaul. According to the latest SIPA report, the growth in full-frame camera sales has been stagnating. It's not that the whole camera industry, I'm talking about dedicated cameras, is in trouble. Smaller sensors camera, especially compact cameras, have been booming since around 2022, with increasing sales year on year since around the end of COVID. APS-C cameras have also been doing quite well, but full-frame camera are not growing anymore in their sales. You can see it even in the second-hand market. There is an increase in the typical prices on eBay of smaller sensors cameras. Old compact cameras from the early 2010s are doing quite well. Their prices are unbelievable to me. What you can get for a crappy old little fixed zoom camera made in 2012 or so is close to its introduction price. And that demand is not really addressed, not really answered by the main manufacturers these days, which is a different topic. The thing is that full-frame cameras have somehow lost some interest. I can think of a few reasons for why it might happen. One of them has to do with the sensor size game being a continuous scale, a reality that is finally sinking in, especially among young people. Sensor and processor technology have been steadily improving. That is true not only for full frame or even larger sensors, but also for smaller sensors camera. You can see what and using simultaneous capturing of multiple images with multiple camera modules. An image made with a phone camera is just as good as an image made with the best of interchangeable lens camera. If you look at it, at its whole, as a given image, you don't start looking at it at pixel levels, which most people will never do. The image produced by the phone camera will have more dynamic range through HDR processing. It will be cleaner due to sophisticated denoising, and it may offer a stronger subject isolation using some distance mapping and simulated Gaussian blur over the background. On the other hand, the disadvantages of large sensors are still apparent. Larger sensors need larger lenses. The better or more harmonious the performance of the lens, the larger it has to be, especially if we are talking about wide aperture lenses, both zooms and primes. The larger the sensor, the more pixels you can potentially cram on it. If you want to obtain sharp images from a high megapixel camera, there are issues to be addressed. First of all, the image has to be stabilized, or you have to use a very high shutter speed in order to avoid camera shake. You have to have a high resolving power lens made with a lot of low density glass, ED glass, that sucks out life out of the images. Those lenses are large because of the typically high curvature required from ED glass elements. There is also a cost involved in it. Those exotic types of glass are not easy to make and handle. The cost of making such lenses is rather high compared to more simple lenses that contain conventional flint and crown glass. High megapixel images require more storage and more processing power to edit them or post-process them. And that is becoming more and more expensive too. The prices of storage media and of processors, both CPUs and GPUs, has doubled or more than that in the past year. This is caused by the high demand of AI companies. So having a full frame system is becoming expensive, rather much more expensive than it used to be. I must also mention the advent of stacked sensors that are much more expensive and complicated to produce than conventional back-illuminated sensors. The lack of real advantage, a perceivable one, in the output of those systems means that we are talking about a game of diminishing return. You can easily achieve very similar results. A smaller sensor system, like an APS-C one, or a Micro Four Thirds one, or even with 1-inch sensors. But here we are already talking about sensor sizes that can be put into a smartphone. The market for dedicated cameras has been growing, slowly but steadily. The thing is that most of the new photographers are young people with limited budget, especially in parts of the world that are not very affluent. China has been a growing market for cameras. The demand for cameras in those markets is for more affordable options. In the West, things are a little bit different, but with a similar conclusion. It is uncool to carry a large camera and a large lens. People don't want to be perceived as the photographer. They want to carry a smaller kit that produces more authentic results. To document their lives, they look for cameras that fit into social environment. So they would much prefer a smaller camera with a small lens that might even look appealing to the public. The future of cameras seems to be cameras such as this one. This is the Olympus Pen F, the digital version that was introduced a decade ago. It's small, it looks a little bit retro, a little bit cool. You could confuse it for a film camera. And it is made to shoot JPEG. Very easy to lift it to the eye and take a quick shot. It has a much smaller sensor. It's a micro four thirds camera. But with a small, nice prime, you can still produce excellent images that are sharp. The smaller sensor in this camera with the more square aspect ratio means that in-body stabilization can be quite efficient. This camera has better stabilization than many full-frame mirrorless cameras, even the most modern ones. It also means that to make a harmonious, sharp image from corner to corner, you do not need a large lens. A lens like this, the Panalaica 15mm f1.7, which is a rather small prime, is perfectly sufficient to make a very sharp image all over the frame. In fact, if you do look for sharp images, you should try a micro four thirds camera. Another benefit of the micro four thirds system is the proportion between the body and the lens. The body can't be made too small because it has to fit a human hand to be held comfortably. This camera body, the Olympus Pen F, is quite dense, quite heavy. A small body like this weighs around 450 to 500 grams. I even added a grip to it to make it more comfortable to hold, and also heavier. On the other hand, lenses can be made small and light, especially if we are talking about wider primes. The center of weight of this setup is concentrated at the back of the camera, close to the body, which makes its handling very stable. Compare it to a camera with a similar size, with a full-frame sensor, that is matched to a much larger lens. That combination might be front-heavy, less comfortable to hold, and not as stable. On a full-frame mirrorless camera, you will need much higher shutter speed in order to achieve a good, stable image without any camera shake, especially if that sensor is crammed with lots and lots of megapixels. In fact, the full-frame equivalent to a setup such as this would not be a mirrorless camera from the ergonomic point of view. It would be something like this. This is the Nikon D4S, a camera made in 2014. And here it is coupled with the Nikon 35mm f2 AFD, which is a small plastic lens, but the bulk and weight of the camera means that the photographer's experience while holding it is the same. The center of gravity is located at the back of the camera, which makes it very steady to hold. In fact, the weight of the body gives this camera some inertia, and this could replace in-body image stabilization or optical stabilization for that matter. The fact that this is a low megapixel body, it only has 16 megapixels, makes it even a steadier setup. It is very easy to produce sharp images with this setup. I could get a good sharp image at 30th of a second, completely avoiding camera shake. It is very easy to bring the camera to the eye and just take a shot. If we look at both these setups, which one would you rather use to shoot people in a social setting? Of course, I would choose this one. The results, the output of both setups is surprisingly similar. The uncomfortable truth is that any camera made in the past 15 years or so can handle 95% of the situations you face it with. That includes many of the phone cameras. So the public perception of a dedicated camera being able to achieve better results or to handle different situations in a better way is somewhat overstated. That said, larger sensor cameras have some advantages. The larger the canvas used to capture light, the more nuance the output can contain. By nuance, I mean there's a certain subtlety that is apparent in large sensor cameras. That refers to the fall off of sharpness. You see, with the smaller sensors, the fall off in sharpness is quite rapid, quite harsh. With a larger sensor, the transition from sharpness to blur is more gradual. A lot of the image area will be somewhere in between, not soft, but not entirely sharp. And that gradual, slow fall off is something I appreciate, especially with the wider lenses. Another aspect of this subtlety is the gentle gradations from highlights to shadows. Again, smaller sensors tend to be harsher. The gradations seem to be faster, while larger sensors, full frame and especially medium format, allow for a lot of tonal nuance in between. You might call it dynamic range, but I don't think it has much to do with deep shadows and highlights. It has to do with in-between values, in the midtones that are more gradual, more nuanced, the larger the sensor. That gradation, that subtlety will also depend on the glass, of course. Modern glass, a lot of low density, low dispersion glass will have a harsh appearance. It is a high contrast type of glass that makes the whole image more contrasty, more sharp, but also diminishes the gentle gradations. While slightly older lenses with simpler designs tend to make the most of the large sensors. That goes against the grain a little bit, I think. It used to be said that to make the most of the sensors, you have to use good glass. But I think that to get the most of the sensor, you have to mount some bad glass on it. Well, it's not really bad, but it's not the sharpest lenses available. It's those lenses that are dimensional, that are poppy, that achieve an image that is both soft and sharp at the same time, if you know what I mean. Those lenses preserve the dimensionality of the scene. They render textures, structures, distances in a true-to-life manner. And their effect is more obvious if you mount them on a full-frame sensor than if you mount them on a smaller sensor, such as a Micro Four Thirds one. Of course, camera phones lack this effect entirely because the sensors are smaller, but also because the plastic lenses they use do not allow for any dimensionality to come through. NASA knows that. On its latest flyover the moon mission, NASA sent into space a setup that is very similar to this. They used D5 cameras that are successors to this one, and the same lens, the Nikon 35mm f2 AFD. The reason they use these older, simpler lenses, I suspect, is not their dimensionality. I think that the mechanical nature of the camera controlling the lens, both the aperture and the autofocus, is more reliable than those new fancy autofocus and electronic communications in newer mirrorless lenses. However, the photographic results achieved in that mission are quite impressive. You can't really tell those images were made with a 30-year-old lens. For camera manufacturers to survive in the next decade, I think that we will have to see a certain divergence in the industry or in the market, where there will be a clear separation between professional models, professional lenses that keep developing aspects such as speed, resolution, and efficiency. And on the other hand, we will see smaller, simpler cameras with maybe smaller lenses, especially prime lenses, and a cooler, more appealing form factor. Fuji has been making such cameras for years. Nikon has been dipping its toe into such models. The camera filming me now, the Nikon ZF, is an example to that. But all manufacturers will have to make more affordable, smaller cameras for the mass market, where new photographers are emerging. In the meantime, you can still find cameras such as this one on the second-hand market, but they are not really affordable. This camera was introduced a decade ago for an introduction price of around $1,400, and second-hand prices for a good copy are still around $1,400, which is unbelievable. It is not a modern camera by any means. The capabilities are relatively limited. It doesn't even have phase detector autofocus. It only focuses using contrast detection. It is a little bit slow, a little bit clunky. Of course, the results it produces are very nice. It has all those special JPEG settings, and you can really play with it. I believe it's not the capabilities of this camera. It's not the output. It's not the image quality that makes it so appealing. It's the experience of using it. It's the public declaration of the photographer using such a camera in social settings. And it's the coolness, the fashion accessory aspect of cameras such as these that make it still desirable a decade after its introduction. Right, I think I have talked enough for one video. If you like this video, if you would like to support my channel, please consider buying me a coffee. It's a nice gesture between gentlemen. You'll find the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you again soon.